It's going live. I'll talk to you in a few minutes. Ago Medasi, West African Fante. Your attention, please, and thank you for joining us today, this Sunday. We hope everyone is maintaining their highest level of mental, physical, and spiritual health today on this African Liberation Day weekend. If you missed the earlier webcast on African Liberation Day, you had seriously missed something, you all, because what you had happen earlier today is a webcast where we had representatives from, we had two panels. There was a panel on international revolutionary struggle by a sister comrade from the socialist Cuba, and also a brother from the Revolutionary League, Socialist League in Kenya. And then we had a second panel on women, a comrade sister from the Western Sahara in North Africa, a comrade sister from the American Indian Movement, comrade sister from the African Party for the Independence of Guinea-Bissau, PAIGC, in West Africa, and a comrade sister from the Amilcar Cabral Ideological School in Nigeria. So you really missed out. The good news is that it will be loaded up on YouTube. And there is also our second program, which is Tuesday, May 25th, day after tomorrow, which is the actual official day of African Liberation Day, starting at 9 a.m. Pacific time. I know some of you probably have to slave. Just, tell the master anything you need to tell him to get out of that if you can, because you will not want to miss these inspiring programs dealing with our people fighting for unity so that we can win on a worldwide basis. So thank you for joining us today as we have this encore presentation of Malcolm X and African Liberation Day. And the reason why it's an encore, for a couple of reasons. One, we did the first set Wednesday night, which was El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, Malcolm X's actual born day, May 19th. And then we're having the encore this weekend because it's still African Liberation Day week. And so we wanted to bring the message a second time, because McDonald's doesn't just advertise for you once. AT&T doesn't just do it once. Chevrolet, Ford, Tesla, they don't just do it once. They come at you nonstop. So we're coming with the information as consistently as we possibly can. So we are glad you're here to join us for this hour. We give thanks to the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere always. This is their land. They are fighting for it back. And we stand in 100% solidarity with them in their quest for their land back. And as always, we give complete respect to our African ancestors, who are the sole reason why we exist here today. They were the ones who stood up and took the blows so that we could survive as a people. And the fact that they did that is the reason why you are here today. Whether you know that or not has no bearing on the accuracy of that statement. So we respect our African ancestors from the eastern shores of Africa all the way to the western shores of the Western Hemisphere. And with that, we get started on our topic today, Malcolm X and African Liberation Day. And to immediately get us started, I turn it over to my amazing daughter, Shukura.
Greetings, everyone. We hope that you are in good spirits. I just want to echo what my dad said. ALD was out of sight, outstanding, off the chain. It broke all barriers. Every year I go to ALD and I have expectations, and they immediately exceed all of what I am thinking I'm coming into a space to experience. We were actually just talking about how many of the speakers just had an impactful way of touching us, because it really does help you connect with your family on the continent. So even if you were born on United States soil, you are able to connect with Africans from the continent, because they too are organizing, they too are a part of organizations, and they're talking to you about some of their experiences that they are facing being in some of those organizations, organizing in Zimbabwe, organizing in Kenya, organizing in Ghana. And so it's humbling beyond measure to hear about what some of our people are going through on the continent, because it reminds us that we really are not as separated as this institution likes to make us think that we are. And so I just want to stress that, because that really is the theme for how Malcolm grew to develop his Pan-Africanism, was he started understanding more and more that Africans who are born in Western America are very much the same as Africans who were born on the continent, Africans who were born in Miami, Africans who were born in Cuba or Zimbabwe or any other place on this earth. We are all connected because, of course, as Nkrumah said, an African anywhere descends from Africa and is in fact African. So with that, I want to start us off by just reminding us that once Malcolm transformed his life to that of being a servant of the people, his commitment to that principle could never be compromised. This is what made him so intimidating to so many people. He constantly demonstrated that standing by principle was the best way to behave, because he knew that many of our people have not yet been taught how to do this. He was also unapologetic about belief and support and being in an organization. The next thing I want to bring to your attention is this principle also caused Malcolm to develop deep conflicts within the Nation of Islam, as many of the leadership there, particularly Elijah Muhammad's family, saw the Nation of Islam as a vehicle to their personal stability and wealth, not for African liberation. This became the creation that would enhance Malcolm's revolutionary attitude and also his approach on how he went about developing organizing skills and bringing in more Pan-Africanist ideologies into his framework for how he chose to organize. Even while still in the Nation of Islam, Malcolm gave clear signs of his increasing radicalism. For example, after the Nation of Islam member Ronald Stokes was killed by the LAPD in 1962, in Malcolm's eyes, the role of the Nation of Islam was to seek maximum retaliation against the police. The Nation of Islam leadership talked him down and away from such ideas. Malcolm began to understand that reaching African liberation would need to be accomplished and pursued through alternative avenues. Next slide. Malcolm grew into his consciousness because he was an honest man. So his quest led him to study and seek out objective truths, i.e., until Africa is free, Africans everywhere will continue to have serious challenges. This stands to reason that Africa's oppression overflows from the continent and spills onto the Africans who descend from there. This is evident when we think about Africa's treatment. An exploited land of resources that are stolen, and people who descend from there no longer serve the same purpose as working as slaves. Thus, Africans are now in the way for capitalist, imperialist methods to rise up. For Malcolm, his commitment to Pan-Africanism required much more than just talking about it. He wanted to develop a program to help it come into existence. His creation of the Organization of the Afro-American Unity, OAAU, was a clear attempt on his part to bring Pan-African organizing to the African community in the US. Again, it is evident that Malcolm had credibility and clout. So using his social capital, he was able to draw interest in joining the OAAU. It was also necessary and beneficial for African people for him to demonstrate the significance of uniting Pan-Africanism teachings into organizing spaces for Africans in the US. As stated previously, there cannot be any action or conversation regarding Africans and their revolution without talking about how Africa is exploited. The two are not mutually exclusive. Africans will not receive justice or be free until Africa is no longer captive and enslaved. The final point I'll make for this slide is Malcolm's work in this area enhanced his analysis to the point where he knew that there was no solution within the capitalist system for Africans. This was the moment when he realized that it was pointless to try to, quote, settle into the system. He realized that buying the house and going to college were not going to be enough to help Africa and Africans reach freedom and justice. And as I said before, I am not knocking anyone who develops ideologies that lifestyle is for them. I'm simply saying for me personally, since I am in school and I am pursuing a degree, I understand that capitalism is not my friend. I understand that capitalism does not want what's best for me or Africans. And it's my responsibility to use my education to make this world better for Africans, which means understanding that oppressive situations are only going to be horrible for Palestinians and for Africans and for LGBTQ and for other members until people like myself use the skills that they have, be it education, resources, materials, to rise up and to overturn those same systems of oppression that are putting down so many people of color, so many women identifying people, or so many differently abled people. It's our responsibility to use whatever we have, whether you have resources, whether you have materials, if you have skills, if you have education, whatever it is. That's why we need you to join an organization so you can bring that to the table, because I guarantee you someone else in that organization doesn't have the same framework that you have. If they did, then you wouldn't even need to be able to do anything because everything would be great and oppression wouldn't exist. So because oppression exists, we all have a responsibility to make this world a better place, which means starting with ourselves and joining an organization so that we can contribute to society just like our ancestors did for us. Next slide, please. When Malcolm said Kennedy being killed was the case of, quote, chickens coming home to roost, his comment was immediately criticized by the capitalist media and Nation of Islam leadership. Despite that, his statement was clearly correct. The US engages in terrorist violence against all humanity 24/7, 365. All Malcolm said is that you cannot do that and not expect that to come back against you at some point. People could not handle that statement because it revealed truth that this system is broken and fails to value human beings. As you know, we are socialized to protect and promote this backward system. If we go against those protective values, then we are anti-patriotic. Malcolm was again setting an example of the necessity to go against the grain, especially when it came to not compromising his principles. Malcolm's brilliance at taking complex concepts and breaking them down into morsels that resonated with our people is unmatched. His analogies on African identity and our current conditions are still used with regularity today. I am ordering a copy of Final Speeches, but if you have a Spotify account, I suggest typing his name in and listening to some of his speeches. For those that have different learning modalities, it might help you learn by listening to him. And I would imagine it would be worth searching if you have a Pandora or Apple Music account as well. Last but not least, and I'll turn it back over to my dad, Malcolm's attention to detail and his consistency helped make, through his personal example, Pan-Africanism palatable to millions of Africans everywhere on earth. Through his discipline, speeches, and actions, Africans were able to build trust in him, his words, and his actions. Malcolm taught people to build and develop hope, trust, and self-esteem among our African community and among ourselves. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. And so just building on what Shukura just talked about, I think it's critically important to frame this in the context of African Liberation Day when we talk about Malcolm X. So what is African Liberation Day? Because a lot of people, especially like people listen to this and you live here in the United Snakes of America, like, you know, all the information we're provided with is what the master wants us to know. So, you know, we scratch and claw, we struggle, we try to find out as much as we can. Some of us do. Some of us are a lot of us are just really just operating on autopilot here. I mean, we just get up, we go to the slave, we slave for the master, we come here, come back, we turn the television on or whatever we're doing, and we don't really think too deeply about anything. We don't even want to think too deeply about anything. And the problem with this is that this type of existence, I can't even call it living, but just existence, surviving, this is exactly what our enemies are depending upon us doing. And I'm not knocking anybody because I know, you know, it's a tough life to live in this society and just go through it and just try to provide for your family. You know, I've done that my whole life, so I'm not talking down against that. But I am saying that we as a people have a history of proud struggle. And everything that you have right now, everything that I have right now, we got through that proud history of struggle. There's nothing we have that we got because of our high level of intelligence, even though we probably do have a high level of intelligence. There is nothing we have that we got because of our good looks, even though I'm sure all of you are beautifully looking people. There's nothing we have that we got because of our strong wit and our great personalities, although I know you all have great personalities and plenty of wit to spare. But the reality for the African masses is that whatever you have, you got because somebody before you struggled so that you could have the opportunity to get where you have. And we know this because we know this entire society was built on our oppression. The entire capitalist system was created from seed money that financed the industrialization period. So this entire system, all the wealth from it, still to this day, comes from exploiting Africa. And it's been that way for 529 years. So whatever you have, if you have a brain in your head, if you have a car, clothes on your back, a place to live, that is only because the masses of your people sacrificed so that you could have it. And so African Liberation Day is a statement to that regard, because we don't have the luxury of just going to work and going on vacation and coming to the house. We don't have that luxury. And the worst crime in humanity, as far as I'm concerned, is being ungrateful. And so we have a responsibility to carry forward the sacrifices that have been made for us. If you went to school and got a degree, that's because your people got their heads bashed in so that you could get that degree. If you have a place to live, that's because your people got their heads bashed in so that you could have a place to live. Because those places 50, 60, 70 years ago would not have rented to you, would not have permitted you to get a bank loan to buy the property, would not have done any of that. The place where you work would not have hired you. The school where you graduated from would not have admitted you. So how did you get those things? Because people got their heads bashed in. People were killed for us to have these opportunities right now. So whether we like it or not, whether we want to admit it or not, that's our reality. And so when we talk about African Liberation Day, what we're talking about is an institution that's designed, you all, to remind us of that and to help us remember that we have so much more work to do before we can say that we're done. So much more work to do that it's not even on the horizon yet for us to be able to say that. And African Liberation Day expands it, because what it's coming to say to us is that not only do we have all this work to do, but we got to do it wherever we are on earth together, because the problems that afflict us as a people happen all over the world. It doesn't just happen here in the United States. That we don't just get shot down by police here in the United States. A lot of us think that because we don't study the world. And when we don't study the world, we're playing right into the master's hands, because what that does is it makes us think, well, nobody is dealing with what I'm dealing with, so I just have to suffer with this by myself. And there's a sense of hopelessness because I'm by myself and I don't really see how I can get out of this situation. But once we begin to understand that we are a worldwide people, these people made us that when they colonized us and enslaved us, then now we see that we have worldwide capacity to address these problems. That's why you all should participate in African Liberation Day. I just don't understand why people don't do it, especially people who don't really understand that we can unify all over the world. I don't really see that as a possibility. Well, how do you know? You've never even investigated it. All you've done is listen to some random ignorant person from Nigeria or Kenya who you worked with once, who was just as ignorant about this question as you are, the blind leading the blind, and because they told you something, then you accept that as gospel. Well, they don't really want you in Africa. Okay, well, that's what that person said, so it must be true. And you know that logic makes absolutely no sense, because I can tell you, I come from the inner city, And I talk to people all the time about what I experienced growing up in inner city, people that did not come from that environment, and they don't accept what I'm saying just because I came from there, because they don't want to agree with it. So that's clearly not sound logic. Just because someone comes from, that doesn't mean. I've been all throughout Africa, and I can tell you the education system in Africa is just as colonial as the one you and I got here in this Western empire. So there is no guarantee just because someone's born in Africa that they're going to be conscious about Africa. In fact, usually that's not the case. So the only way that that happens is through us engaging in an organized process to deconstruct colonialism and create a Pan-African consciousness. And that's what Pan-Africanism means, all Africans for Africa. And so that's what African Liberation Day is, you all. It's our institution to represent that. And we should support that. We can't just support Juneteenth. Juneteenth is great. It's wonderful. I've been commemorating Juneteenth for going on 50 years. So I don't need anybody to tell me about Juneteenth. I knew about it before you did and participated in it before you did. So Juneteenth is great. Not talking against Juneteenth, but we have always been so much more than just enslaved people in the United Snakes of America. Well, that's only one fraction of who we are. So African Liberation Day, it's like Juneteenth buffed up, and it gives you a much broader perspective of what's happening with our people in an effort to help us come together. And it's an institution because we recognize our enemies use institutions to keep us confused. That's what they do. That's why I have not eaten a McDonald's Big Mac since I was in high school, over 40 years ago, 40. I have not eaten meat since that time. But I can tell you right now, 2 all beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun. And the reason why I know that so clearly is because they drum it into you 24/7, 365 days a year. They drum into you that Memorial Day coming up is a day that you need to commemorate and respect because people died fighting for your freedom. And on some level, if you have not engaged in consistent organizing work to combat those lies and nonsense, you believe it. Whether you admit it or not, you do. You believe it on some level subconsciously. Yeah, this is the day I need to respect. When in reality, there is not a single war this country has fought that was not fought to enrich the super rich at the expense of the masses of people on earth. Not one war. They try to tell you that World War II, they woe with that. You can't say that about World War II because that was a war against fascism and Nazi Germany. That's what they try to tell you. And if you don't study it, you'll be confused and think, well, yeah, that's true. I see it all the time. Well, World War II, they have these memes. Well, in World War II, Antifa fought against fascism. So that's supposed to mean that you have to be for Antifa, but that's backward logic, especially since it's not even true. Because the reality is that these people weren't fighting against fascism in World War II. Hitler was in power 8 full years before the US even bothered to get engaged in the war. So clearly they were not, he was taking up territory in Europe left and right, and they didn't care about that. And they certainly didn't care about the Third Reich and its institutional white supremacy and its extermination of people the 12 million people who did not fit their image of what that represented. They certainly, in this country, these people didn't care about that because the U.S. troops, the African U.S. troops who fought in World War II, if you know some, you got some in your family, ask them if they're still alive and able to talk to you. And if not, study it, you all. Because if you do, what you'll find is that the Africans in World War II were segregated, even though they were fighting in Europe against the Nazis. And when Nazis were captured by the US military, they were allowed to eat with the white soldiers in the mess halls. And your own African people were not allowed to do that. So don't tell us that nonsense about they were fighting against fascism. That's a bold-faced lie. But if you don't know the history, you'll believe that on some level. You'll come to July 4th and you'll be wearing red, white, and blue talking about it's Independence Day. And July 4th, 1776, our African people were in chains and chattel slavery in this country. So what kind of fool is an African sitting up here talking about it's our Independence Day, and these people weren't even thinking about you when they set up that institution. So we know this, and so that's why we have to create our own institutions. So African Liberation Day is that for us. It's an institution that says, no, capitalism was built on our backs. We need something different. And that something different is the total liberation and unification of Africa under scientific socialism. It's the analysis that until Africa is free, no African anywhere on earth will ever be free. I don't care how smart or good looking or fine we are, it's not going to happen until Africa is free. And so it's our institution to say that. And as Shukura made clear, Brother Malcolm was not confused about any of this. And in fact, his growing level of consciousness, as illustrated by the statement he made about JFK's assassination, linking JFK's assassination to US imperialism's sabotage role in the Congo in Central Africa, and linking the Congo, what was happening to our people in the Congo, to what was happening to our people in Mississippi. This was brilliance on the part of Malcolm. And it was his ability to take these complex international happenings and break them down in common everyday language that each and every one of us could understand, that made him such a brilliant organizer. As Peter Bailey, who was one of the lieutenants in the Organization of Afro-American Unity, said after Malcolm was assassinated, he called Malcolm a master teacher. That's what he meant, is that Malcolm had the ability to do that, to take these complex concepts and break them down for us so that we can understand them. So instead of you saying, well, you're African because that's where your history is and that's where your future is linked to, well, that's all true. But Malcolm said, you don't have kids, a cat doesn't have, if a cat has kittens in the oven, you don't call them biscuits. Irrefutable logic that still resonates with people 60 years after the man said it. When he said, you don't separate a tree from the roots, that's irrefutable. 60 years after the man said it, to make a clear distinction that no matter that we've been in the Western Hemisphere hundreds of years, we are still Africans. And as Kwame Ture said, our culture is not African American culture. There's no such thing. Our culture is African culture fighting to survive in spite of US imperialism and capitalism. That's what our culture is. That's why if you have an afro and you have a pick in your afro and you walk into a store, everybody sees you as a threat, because just your very existence as an African expressing who you are is a threat to this society. We got to understand this, you all. We are so confused about this. We think that because we have accepted the master's logic that we're like everybody else here. We're here to fight for a better life. And if you believe that, then it won't make sense to you what happens to us on a day-to-day basis. But if you understand what I'm telling you right now, then you recognize that this society was built on our backs and is maintained on our backs. So clearly, in that reality, any effort we make to stand up in any way whatsoever is going to be deemed as a threat to this society. It's just that simple, you all. So if you understand that, you don't need to be saying ridiculous things like, well, if it was black people, that would have never happened at the Capitol. Well, of course. Tell us something we don't know. Of course it wouldn't have happened, because those idiots that stormed the US Capitol on January 6th, they didn't even have enough sense to demand larger stimulus checks. They could have at least had enough brain capacity to do that. They didn't even do that. They didn't even have a demand. They were so stupid. And the fact that they were there and got the low-key reception they got is because they posed zero threat to the status quo in this society. No threat whatsoever. All they did was they probably had to hire a couple of custodians to clean up, a few glass companies to replace a few panels of glass, and then it was business as usual for the capitalist system. Those idiots did absolutely nothing to challenge anything. So they're no threat to the status quo. Most of them are just as racist as the people that govern this country. So they don't pose any real threat to this government, you all. So they're not going to respond to them in a way that suggests that they do. Whereas when you stand up and sneeze, you pose a threat to this system. So it doesn't matter if you are 20 blocks from the Black Lives Matter demonstration. They're going to jump on you and her because you're a threat. And the only problem with that is you don't understand that you're a threat. You still want to try to believe this myth that you're an American and you're a part of the American society. And what Malcolm X was trying so desperately to do, and what African Liberation Day tries so desperately to do, is get our people to understand not what we want you to understand, but the cold, hard facts of our reality in this backward empire. Nothing else. Nothing else. So let us stop and say we just want to give respect. Our comrade, Brother Saini, is indicating in the comments he's listening from Africa, from Gambia, and that we are the same people. African Liberation Day is talking about the program that happened earlier that I mentioned to you, was superb. Long live Africa and forward to Pan-Africanism. Now, this is a brother that I had the humble honor of meeting several years ago. And this brother is from Gambia and is back there. And so he's telling you right here on Facebook, you can see it, that we're the same people. So if you're going to listen to this random fool from Nigeria or wherever the hell he was from that told you the nonsense that some of us believe that we're not Africans, or some people believe, because that happened to them, then you should accept our people when they illustrate the truth to us. Okay, so that's the reality. And we've got to understand that so that we can move forward collectively as a people. Us being divided based on where we were born, the borders, we didn't establish any of these borders. We didn't create the United Snakes of America. The colonizers created. We didn't create Mexico and Honduras and Guatemala and El Salvador and Belize. The colonizers created those borders. We didn't create Brazil and Venezuela. The colonizers created those borders. We didn't create Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, Zimbabwe, Azania, or what you call South Africa, Morocco, Sudan. The colonizers created those borders. So why it makes no sense for us to operate as if the reality created for us by our enemies is going to serve our interests. That should be clear as day. We have no obligation to respect that. And it does nothing to benefit us through it. You can't make one tangible argument as to how we'll be stronger by recognizing the colonial borders and claiming that we're different than Africans born in different countries than us. And it doesn't even make any sense because some of those people are your blood relatives. Because when they kidnapped us, they just split us up, you all. So you don't know who lives where. You don't know where your aunt lives and where your uncle or your cousin or your non-gender binary African relative live. You don't know where they live. They could be in the Caribbean, South America, Central America, Africa, Europe. Most of us don't even know here in the United States that Nova Scotia in Canada, the Africans up there settled there, escaping slavery in this country. So most of us are so ridiculously ignorant that we would see an African and they would tell us, oh, I'm from Canada, from Nova Scotia. Oh, you're not the same as me. Most of us are so dumb that that's what we would think because we know nothing about our own history. And so African Liberation Day and Malcolm X struggle to try to correct that for us. Nothing else. We're not throwing shade in anybody, but it's time for us to wake up, you all. That's all. That's all that means. And so when we did the broadcast Wednesday, we talked about I talked about Malcolm's relationship with Kwame Nkrumah in Ghana at the time, and then in Guinea, and then Malcolm's relationship with Sekou Touré in Guinea, Ben Bella in Algeria, Gamal Abdel Nasser in Egypt. And all of these, were great Pan-Africanist leaders in Tanzania. And that was certainly indicative of Malcolm's growing consciousness. But one thing And then also the Cuban revolutionaries, Fidel Castro, Ernesto Che Guevara, et cetera, and so forth. But another thing that Malcolm's exposure to these Pan-African and other socialist revolutionaries did is it expanded his consciousness. Now, all of us know about the letter Malcolm wrote from Mecca after he did the Muslim Hajj. And we all know about that, and that's a wonderful thing. And we can talk about that in great detail. And I just want to answer, I will do that, but I just want to answer, someone is asking in the link to the video from African Liberation Day. So again, for the program, and we'll mention this again at the end, for the program on Tuesday, May 25th, the second part of our international webcast starts at 9 a.m. PST, as well as the video from today, and after Tuesday, the video from Tuesday, and a ton of other videos about our work around the world, including many of these videos of these workshops Shukura and I do. You want to go to the A-APRP. You can watch at the A-APRP YouTube page. It's A-APRP. You just go to youtube.com and then type in All African People's Revolutionary Party, and our page comes up, the international page. And then when you go on that page, it'll be broadcasting live on Tuesday, and then the videos will be there. Or you can go to the Facebook page, A-APRP Community Organization, All African People's Revolutionary Party. You can just type in A-APRP, and it'll say Community Organization, and you can watch the live video Tuesday. But if you want the live broadcast rather, but if you want the videos, you have to go to the YouTube page that I just mentioned. And we'll mention that again at the end. And it's A-APRP, not APR, not the American Association of Retired People. Get that straight, okay? All African People's Revolutionary Party. Nothing against the American Association of Retired People. I'm a member of that one too. I get discounts. I get all the discounts. I'm going camping next week and I got everything discounted. So I'm not against the American Association of Retired People, but that is obviously a completely different organization than the All African People's Revolutionary Party. So make sure you have that straight. But getting back to this Malcolm's work with these Pan-African and socialist revolutionaries, expanding his consciousness. What this did, you all, is it created, and I see where, I think someone has put it in the chat, so that's good on Facebook. Thank you. But what that did for Malcolm is this is one of the primary things that expanded his consciousness beyond what he had experienced in his 12 years in the Nation of Islam. And not knocking the Nation of Islam whatsoever, but saying that what Malcolm was able to experience in his travels and what Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Touré, Fidel Castro, and all of these people struggled with him to help him understand is that our struggle is much broader than just because we are Black, okay? And if you read the book I mentioned last week, Malcolm X, the final speeches of Malcolm X, not the last speeches, that's a totally separate book of speeches, but the final speeches of Malcolm X, he talks about this, the last 11 speeches he gave before he was assassinated, he talked about this. So it's important to understand because a lot of us today have a strong race consciousness. Like we understand, well, we're oppressed because of racism, but that's all we understand as far as we go. We don't have a consciousness beyond that. So a lot of us don't understand like the All African People's Revolutionary Party's analysis. We have what we call a nation, class, gender analysis, not just a race analysis, race being nation, but a nation, class, gender analysis. So we have an analysis that looks at our conditions based on who we are, racially, if you will, by national origin or identity, however you want to define that, by class, because that's critically important, and by gender, because that's critically important. So if you have a nation, class, gender analysis, and this is what Kwame Nkrumah, Sekou Touré, Fidel Castro, and the others struggled with Malcolm to understand when he was coming out of the Nation of Islam, is that there are many people who look like us that are enemies to our people. You look at Mobutu Sese Seko, who played a role in the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, what Malcolm was talking about when he made the chickens coming home to roost comment, and how Mobutu was the CIA man set up by Frank Carlucci, who was the CIA's Central Intelligence Agency. We call them criminals in action. CIA station chief in the Congo. And they assassinated Patrice Lumumba, who was the democratically elected. They always want to tell you they're for democracy. But as soon as our people express democracy, or any people, in a way that doesn't represent their capitalist interests, they got to go. So they don't like democracy. They just want what's in their political and economic interests. So they assassinated Patrice Lumumba and moved him out of the way and created a sabotage in the Congo that still exists today. And you got to understand that most of what you function with in your day-to-day lives today are minerals that somehow, some way originated in the Congo, because it's the most minerally rich region in the world. So much of the automobile parts, the automobile you have, the cell phone you're using, the laptop, all the components for that come from the Congo, you all. So that's why they had such an interest in destabilizing that so they could maintain control about it. And that's what Malcolm talked about. And what these revolutionaries helped him understand is that people like Mobutu, who was the CIA's man in the Congo to destabilize it, these people are black as the pavement. So you can't just say, well, people say, well, I'm rooting for, I hear this all the time nowadays, I'm rooting for everybody black. I'm not rooting for everybody black, because everybody black is not in the interest of the masses of African people on earth. I'm rooting for every African that is conscious about fighting against the enemies of Africa and all of humanity. That's who I'm uniting with. And I'm uniting with everybody else that's not African, that's interested in fighting against the enemies of humanity. And for the Africans who are siding with the enemies of humanity because they see a payday in it, or they're just confused, or a combination therein, then as far as we are concerned, you are the enemies of Africa, African people, and all of humanity. And we have nothing for you except battle and ultimate victory on our part over you. Nothing else. Nothing else. So this is what these revolutionaries helped Malcolm come to understand. And this is something that most of us today still don't understand, as I just articulated. And so this evolved Malcolm's consciousness. So they're not going to tell you that. They'll just tell, well, he wrote a letter saying that white people were not all devils. And that's all they want you to know. Malcolm wrote tons of letters from Africa when he was there, but the only one they talk to you about is the one where he said white people aren't devils. And we don't investigate it further, so we think that's the only letter he wrote. He wrote tons of letters to tons of people, okay? His daughter just published his diary 2 or 3 years ago. Asala Shabazz, one of his younger daughters, just published his diary. She got the book back. The European man had the book because it was in the basement of the house he foreclosed on the other daughter and kicked her out, evicted her, and the box was in the basement. It had all of Malcolm's handwritten notes. And the white man had it on eBay selling it. And the Sister Shabazz went there and got a court order and thank God, got the notes back and published it. So you can check it out yourself. Malcolm's telling all the people he wrote to when he was in Africa and what he was learning, the things I'm talking to you about. I'm not making all this up. So, you can study that and see that that's what Malcolm was doing. That's the direction he was going in. And because of Malcolm's evolving consciousness that he was engaged in from his exchanges with these African revolutionaries and the work that they were doing to build the international network that we've talked about before. If you don't know, you can go back and look at the videos and get more information about that. But because of that, he was in such a critical position as being a respected and uncompromising spokesperson for African liberation, living in the belly of this beast, the United States of America. And whether we know it or not, whether we understand it or not, our enemies clearly understood that, and they knew that they had to silence this man. to stop him from talking about our need to unite on a worldwide basis, our need to honor institutions like African Liberation Day and live out the principles that African Liberation Day exhibits. They knew they had to stop him from being able to do that. I would tell you right now confidently that if Martin Luther King was still alive, was still talking about integration today and social integration, he would still be alive today. It was when Martin Luther King realized that the social integration was strictly a manifestation of the capitalist exploitation and oppression that bullets were prepared to be used against Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. If Malcolm X was talking about white devils, he would still be alive today. These devils don't care nothing about us calling them devils. They will contact us and say, hey, we'll help you print up some white devil material. We'll help you develop some white devil talking points. These are our packages, what you paid for us to help you. They'll make money off of us calling them devils. They don't care about that, because us calling them devils does absolutely nothing to challenge the status quo of who has power in this world, who owns and controls the means of production, and who doesn't. It does nothing to challenge that, and that's all those people care about. So if he was calling white people devils today, he would still be alive. It was because he evolved based on the work he was doing with African revolutionary Pan-Africanists and other socialist revolutionaries from Cuba and other places, to understand that until Africa is free, no African anywhere in the world will be free. And that Malcolm knew in those last 11 months that his job was to convince the African masses in the US that we are Africans and belong to the African nation. That's why he's not here any longer. That is the reason, because they say, well, you can say whatever you want. It's a free country. You can say whatever you want in this country as long as nobody's listening, or just a few people are listening, or just the same people are listening. But as soon as it grows to the point where enough people are listening so that a threat to the power structure is imminent, then you'll find out very quick how little freedom of speech you have in this country. There's no question about that. And all you have to do is study what happened to people like Malcolm to understand that. So the legacy of all of that is clear, is that Malcolm's uncompromising push for African dignity influenced so many activists, organizers who came after he did. See, the imperialists, they're confused. They think that their technology trumps everything else, and all they have to do is kill everybody. That's what they thought in Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan and everywhere else. And you see, they haven't made any progress in Iraq and Afghanistan. Afghanistan is no farther along to what they wanted it to be than it was in 1991, right? There's no, in Iraq either. There's no question about that, because they think that just if they, use their bombs and their weapons, that's all they have to do. They don't understand that we're a spiritual people. They don't understand that. And I can understand why they don't understand it, because as Kwame Ture talked about, none of the major religions even existed, even came out of Europe. That's why atheism is the strongest it is in the world in Europe. And I'm not against atheism, but I'm just saying African people primarily are not atheist people. I'm not saying we're Christians. Some of us are Christians, some of us are Muslims, some of us are Ife, Santeria, Yoruba, some of us are Coptic, some of us are Rastafarian. We're all kind of spiritual forms, and some of us are atheists. But we're spiritual people by and large. And so we understand, even if our enemies don't, that they can kill the man, but they cannot kill the spirit. They can kill the woman, but they cannot kill the spirit. They can kill the non-gender binary person, but they cannot kill the spirit. And we recognize and understand that. So even though they killed Malcolm, they didn't kill his influence over us. And I would argue his influence is stronger today than it was when he was alive, because of the work to carry out his legacy that's been carried out by a number of organizations, like the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, like the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, and then just the Black Panther Party, like the Revolutionary Action Movement, like the Convention People's Party, the Democratic Party of Guinea, like the African Party for the Independence of Guinea-Bissau, like Socialist Cuba, like the Republic of New Africa. All of these organizations have advanced the ideas and philosophies of Malcolm X. If you listened to the African Liberation Day program earlier, the brother who was speaking from the Revolutionary Socialist League in Kenya, he referenced Malcolm X multiple times. He's all the way over in East Africa. He studied more about Malcolm than Africans born in the US, who live right, some born right a couple blocks from where Malcolm was born. He studied more about Malcolm. So Malcolm X and his influence has hit and spread across the entire African world, the entire world, period. And that's what we got to understand. We don't understand that. When Barack Obama got elected president in 2008, I know some of you all love use some of Barack Obama because, again, you know, what you have to work with is what the enemy has provided you. And so a lot of you miss this, what I'm about to say, but when he was elected, Al-Qaeda issued a communique, and the communique said, this man is not representative of a strong version of people of African descent in the United States. That would be representative by someone like Malcolm X. And I'm not endorsing Al-Qaeda, but I'm saying that statement is 100% correct. That's an irrefutable statement that they made. And those people don't live here. They will never come to the US, obviously. But they know more about Malcolm X than most Africans here in the US. That's a fact. That's a fact. So his legacy is there. All we have to do is want to study it and know about it. That's all we have to do. Because based largely on Malcolm's contributions, it made it so that we can't go backwards. All we can do is go forward. All we can do is get a better understanding of who we are as African people going forward. And a lot of what Malcolm provided for us laid the groundwork for us to be able to do that. And then Malcolm helped strengthen the unity, African unity, and the work that, you know, we're engaged in to do that. Like I said, it makes it so much easier because we have people like Malcolm. Our people around the world connect with that because he was correct. And so we just come and say that, yeah, we work with the vision of Malcolm X. That's it. We're building together. And he was able to help build that bridge, make a concrete contribution to that bridge. And there's no question about that. So we're going to talk for just a moment about some of the things coming up, because we just want to make sure there's no confusion about all of these things happening. This is African Liberation Day week, you all. You know how some of y'all, or some people you know, if you don't do it, you know, when it gets to be around Thanksgiving, you kick into gear, or people you know kick into gear. You get out the Christmas tree, or you chop one down, or whatever, however y'all do that, and you go shopping, and you get all of the decorations out, and you spend the next several weeks prepping up for December 25th, because that's your day. That's your day to shine. That's what you do. And if that's what you do, that's what you do. But understand that for us as African revolutionaries, we're not doing that for Christmas. We're doing that for African Liberation Day. I don't even celebrate any of these people's holidays, because I feel like these people's holidays are our horror days. So I do celebrate African Liberation Day. And I have celebrated African Liberation Day for 40 years. I get excited like a child. I could, for all these years, every night before African Liberation Day, I can't even sleep. And I couldn't sleep last night. And I hope to God that never changes, because the excitement is because I know that all over the world, our people are focused on coming together to end our problems once and for all. And there is nothing in the world that excites me more than that concept. So there are a lot of things happening this week, and we want to make sure you know about them. First, we want to say Tuesday, again, we are having the second part of our African Liberation Day international webcast. African Liberation Day is officially May 25th. So we want to invite you to come, and please come. You all make some time. I know you got a slave for the master. Like, you know, make up don't be such a obedient slave. Like, you know, make up something. If you need, like, nobody has better excuses for the slave master than me. If you want to contact me, I'll tell you how to do that in a minute, and I can give you all the best excuses in the world that won't even be questioned. Why? Because I've been doing it successfully for decades. And so I want to help you, train you on how to do it. Because I'm not trying, my goal in life was I knew I wanted to organize for African revolution. So I wanted to, the elders told me, get you a college degree, get you some skills so that you can get a job that had paid time off. And I did that. And so now that I got that, I use it. I use it for my people. So if you don't have that, I understand you got to make money to pay your rent. But a lot of you that have paid time off, you still don't use the master got you totally trained. I never call in sick. What kind of fool would brag about that? What kind of slave on the plantation would brag? I'm up early to pick cotton every day. What kind of idiot is that? I try whatever you got to do to get out of picking cotton, do it. Especially if the time is going to be spent organizing your people for liberation. What kind of clown is that? Like, yeah, I'm trying to get out of the slave master whatever opportunity I get. So Tuesday, 9 a.m. Pacific time, we start because it's a worldwide broadcast. So we can't start just based on the schedule of those of us in the United States. It's worldwide. So we have to do it. If you watch today, the sister in Nigeria was in the dark speaking because it's nighttime there. So we got to start at a time that's flexible for everybody on earth. We're not just, our world doesn't end at the end of our nose like so many people. We're worldwide. So that's why it starts at that time. And again, you're going to have a wonderful collection of presentations from people all over the world. So come and tell your friends. And you can watch at the A-APRP community page here on Facebook, or you can go to YouTube and watch on the A-APRP channel there. It's just that simple. Just pull up the page and it'll be streaming, live streaming, and then you just click on it and you can watch. That's all you have to do. Forward ever to worldwide Pan-African unity. We certainly hope that you join us. There is nothing better that you can do. And I'll just say, you know, join an organization. That was the theme that was expressed repeatedly to support our theme of forward ever to worldwide Pan-African unity, because we will never have it when most of us are not engaged in organizing work to liberate our people. We can't do it without that. So join an organization. You know, I'm reading this book, Heartbeat of Struggle. It's a biography about Yuri Kochiyama, a wonderful Japanese woman who was basically, you know, her family was incarcerated because they incarcerated all the Japanese during World War II. And she was a patriotic American. She loved America. And she started a newsletter called Christmas Cheer. And it would have all this year-round Christmas stuff in it. They talked about how glad they were to be Americans. And then in the early 60s, she moved to Harlem, her and her husband and her children. And they saw the realities of white supremacy and how capitalism is built on the exploitation of the African masses. And she started to get involved in the community. And she joined the Harlem Parent Committee. And from that, she participated with her children in the Harlem Freedom School. And it was from that she learned how this country was built on exploiting Africa. And from that work, she got involved and she studied and she met Malcolm X and she wrote Malcolm X. And if you read his diary, like I'm suggesting you do, then you know she was one of the people he wrote multiple times when he was in Africa. And as a result of that, he accepted her request to join his organization of Afro-American Unity. Yes, she was a Japanese woman, but we already told you, we're going to unite with anybody that's against injustice. We're not just going to unite with you because you black is the payment and your values are completely bankrupt. We're going to unite with people who were fighting for justice. So yes, he accepted her application. And yes, she joined the OAAU. And yes, she was one of the most dedicated soldiers in the OAAU. And yes, she gave Malcolm mouth-to-mouth resuscitation when he was shot 16 times on February 21st, 1965. And yes, the Republic of New Africa accepted her as an elder in their organization, because we're trying to get free, you all. We ain't concerned about no symbolism or how things look. Some other people are concerned about that because they're not trying to do anything. We're trying to get free, and we know how to do it. And we just got to get enough people to get involved so that we can build capacity. So yes, come to African Liberation Day. Join organizations that have organized political education so that you can grow your understanding like Malcolm did, like Yuri Kuchiyama did. And if you want information on how to join the APRP, go to in the middle left there, aprp-intl.org. And if you forget, you can get information about African Liberation Day there. And then under that, abetterworld.me is the site you can go where all these videos are housed, and you can find out, information. There's writings there that I've written and everything else. You want to contact us if you want us to do workshops or whatever, that's how you do that. And then I'm on the editorial board for hoodcommunist.org. Check that out, www.hoodcommunist.org. We have a wonderful article all of us wrote about African Liberation Day on there right now for this week. So you definitely want to read that. And we have a number of these broadcasts that are ongoing every week. A-APRP Pantula podcast, look that up. It is outstanding. The Forward Ever podcast, it is outstanding. The weekly A-APRP New Mexico chapter newscast at 12 p.m. Mountain Time on the A-APRP New Mexico Facebook page. That is outstanding. We want to encourage you to buy my book, read it in groups, Organize, a guide for organized defense against white supremacist, patriarchal, and fascist violence. I said several years ago I wanted to write something that resonated with people and that could help people have a toolkit to get free, and I cannot complain because that is happening with this book. And I am working with so many people. I'm exhausted, but I would not have it. Me and Shukura were talking about this before we came on. We would not have it any other way. We are fired up for this work. So keep it coming. And join us again for African Liberation Day on Tuesday. We appreciate each and every one of you. And also next week, on May 30th, we're going to be talking about here, same time, why Pan-Africanism is the highest expression of Black power. Why Pan-Africanism is the highest expression of Black power. Next Sunday, that's our topic. So join all of these podcasts. Go to the sites we mentioned. We will see you Tuesday at African Liberation Day. If you need an excuse for the slave master, abetterworld.me. Forward ever, backwards never. Organize one unified socialist Africa. Smash white supremacy. Smash patriarchy. Smash homophobia. Capitalism. You all already know it's got to go. Have a great rest of your Sunday evening. See you Tuesday. African Liberation Day 2021.